Families look different from each other. We arrive via different vessels. I wanted to talk about what it took me to become a parent, being one in 6 people affected by infertility. As an independent parent, assisted reproductive technology helped me realize my daughter. She schools me daily. I am so blessed and honored for this challenging and loving relationship our modern family is in. As I try to grow mi familia with my boyfriend, the challenges my body faces in today's given economy with the industry of IVF evolving every year, I need to know all the options available to me in the state that I live in. I wanted a safe space to learn from our guests, to rehash my experience in order to find new futures. This title of Mothers in Arms came from Brothers in Arms. It means men who served together in war, so by extension, they share a very close, strong relationship. I wanted to build a community where women who serve together in conflict emphasize the importance of friendship when it can feel like we're at war.
You're listening to Mothers in Arms podcast. My name is Leslie Lopez. You can follow more on the stories you listen to here on mothersinarms.pod on TikTok and Instagram.
Okay. I thought I'd start talking about how this all started. In 2013, I was married and started the path to try and have my family. I always knew I wanted to be a mother. I was always a nurturing person. So getting married, I really did want to get that rolling in my mid 30s. At that point, as a Latin woman, my family considered me, wow, almost past my prime. And I definitely felt the social aspect of where you don't have kids yet, you're in your 30s. That's just a social thing that happens that, of course, was on my mind. So as soon as I was married, we started the process. I started going to my OBGYN appointments, and lo and behold, you start to discover things about your body, right? You spend your entire life trying not to get pregnant, different forms of birth control. When you start to take that out, that's when you start finding out the real part of your anatomy, right? What's going on there. So I discovered I had fibroids and cysts and started the process of removing them. I had an HSG test done when they flush out your tubes to make sure there isn't any cartilage, any scar tissue in there. I started going to a fertility specialist. And in 2014, I found out I had gotten naturally pregnant. What a blessing this was. It was a complete shock to find out I was 3 months pregnant. I remember that day. I remember. And we were so happy. We went about life. We were about to move homes. And I just remember that time being very joyous. Soon afterwards, 1 month later, I woke up one morning. I knew something wasn't right. I remember the Friday before, friends were stopping by to visit me while I was on bed rest. And one of them later on said to me that she didn't think I looked so good. And I even tried to do a gentle dinner out in the neighborhood, like the Thursday before, like, oh, let me try and just sit in the car and then sit in the restaurant. And those friends who are doctors said to me also that I wasn't looking so good. That night before, I remember waking up in the middle of the night and starting to see blood. And I knew something was wrong. I just tried to hang on to as many minutes of Lena as I could before I finally told Roger he had to drive me. I just knew my womb wasn't right. I remember the nurse was saying to me that, Lena wasn't going to make it, that, this infection this was it, there was no point in trying to save her. And since it was a Sunday, obviously Dr. Goldberg wasn't in the office. They got him on the phone, and he's the one that explained to me that I could wait for him to come back from, he was out of town, or they could inject me with something that would, essentially ease her death. So I wanted her, obviously, as long as I could, keep her in me. And so I said, okay, I'll wait for him. And he ended up coming around. I want to say it was like 6 o'clock that day. And we just waited in the room. And I remember at that point, I was still thinking that I was going to go into the special rooms, and they're asking me what entree I want to eat later. And, here I am thinking I'm going to be in the maternity ward. So silly, like literally just not thinking about what was that going to feel like being surrounded by hearing babies and just joy. I remember while we waited on the little TV, Magnificent Seven was playing, and it's really funny. It was just sort of, I hadn't seen it yet at that point. So we were waiting and waiting, and then suddenly he's there, and there was a little bit of miscommunication, whatever. They didn't give me the epidural early on because suddenly Dr. Goldberg was there, and he's got like his hand inside me, and I'm like, I'm not supposed to be feeling this. But I remember him saying, "You feel that?" Yeah, I do. So he like upped up the dose of the epidural a little late, but I remember it was a combination of pushing and pulling, and it didn't last more than I guess 5 minutes. Honestly, it went by really fast after that. Roger stayed as long as he could, and then I needed my space. I remember he offered to stay, but I asked him to leave, and I remember just like burying myself in the iPad, and I brought this iPad with me, and I went on this like binge of Downton Abbey, and I think I watched like 2 seasons maybe. They gave me something to sleep, but I remember just being wide awake, not sleeping very much, just sort of surrounding my space with like 1,000 candles and simpasuchil flowers and just feeling little Lena's soul. Like, I remember feeling my grandma's soul just like, I remember feeling Abuelita Mago's soul just tucked with me. I didn't see her, obviously. I just remember her warmth. I remember what she said to me those last days when she was in the hospital for herself. I remember one time she said to me, I didn't understand what it meant then, and I didn't understand what it meant that night. I remembered much later when my mom reminded me. But Abuelita Mago said to me, I'll hold on to that baby for you, Leslie. And I thought she was referring to a doll or just, I don't know what she was talking about. She was dying, but I wonder if this is what she was talking about. Basically, that day I signed a birth certificate and a death certificate at the same time. My angel, Lena Ann Birnbaum, came at 35 weeks, and today she is buried at Hillside Memorial. I'm really proud of taking the steps in that days, where everything was falling through the cracks of my life. But someone came and said, hey, if you want, we can find a spot for your daughter at the cemetery. And I'm so happy that I hung on to that. My ex-husband as well was like, I'm so happy he took the steps to do that for us. I remember the following day I had to go back to Cedars to pick up the certificates. I don't know why we left without them. I think I just wanted to get out of there, and I just forgot to stop at the desk, obviously. But I could have sent the housekeeper. I could have sent Roger. I think he was in a meeting. It was for all technical purposes, it was just easier if I went. So back I went. I remember I just went back there. I went up to the ward. I treated it like business, but I started like when she handed it to me, I lost it. I remember it felt good actually to have someone say to me for the first time. The nurse handed me the papers. She looked at it. She realized what she was handing me, and she said she was sorry for my loss, and it felt good to have someone say that to me. We took the nursery down. We had started to put things up. He had everything just put into boxes and shoved into a room in the garage. If I had sat in those feelings, what could have I discovered about myself? If I had sat there, maybe had the challenging conversation with myself, with my ex husband, would we have known then that we did want a child? We didn't want a child. Maybe I would have seen a bit of relief in him. Maybe I would have seen deep loss. We went about life with this loss in our life. We didn't really talk about it. We pretty much swept it under the rug. I don't know how we even did that. I was lactating. I looked pregnant. Everybody knew the baby was coming, and yet we just said sorry, it didn't work out, and we didn't get into the nitty-gritty details of what happened. But I know now that that wasn't the right thing to do. Not sitting down to mourn and grieve is so important, to just sit in the pain in order to move yourself forward. I knew Roger wasn't into adoption. He had made that clear. And I just didn't want to start opening up the Pandora's box of, oh, okay, well, what does it mean if this was our last chance? What does it mean if there's something wrong with more than just me? Should we start testing sperm? Should we start testing embryos right away? It's hard to think of all those things in the moment. Not having those conversations made me convince myself that I didn't want to be a parent then, that it was okay to press pause and let Claire let Claire welcome her family. Let's welcome our grandchildren. And I started to see just people around me living their lives without children. And I thought, well, maybe not everybody should be a parent just because they can. Maybe there's enough Lopez's in this world. I just wasn't allowing my success list to exist at the time. I didn't have my priorities straight the way I thought they were. Women are born with all the eggs we will ever have. My hope is that young women in their 20s can pay attention to their bodies early on, to the signs that it shows them. Keeping a journal of when you get your period, its length, any side symptoms, what birth control you're on, what hormone strength it is, it's important to know. Maybe you're not getting your period. Maybe it's extra painful. Young ladies should be encouraged to check in with their OBGYN early, be proactive about what's going on with their bodies, any potential ovarian cysts or fibroids, anything that could be problematic later on. Mujeres, get the knowledge of your body for your future. Know that your eggs are fresh, they are numbered, and any bad health habits affects them. You can freeze some, donate some to help someone out, and in turn, help yourself. Especially if you're black, brown, or yellow like I am, where the demand is high, but the options are few and far between. As a Latina, it's cliche to say or think that we are all fertile myrtles and that we're not supposed to be affected by infertility. And when it does, we feel shamed. I'm a child of immigrant parents. They didn't sit me down to have a chat with me about how sex works or how long my period was supposed to last. I'm just grateful that I had my sisters and my cousin to show me the ropes. Thanks for listening to this episode of Mothers in Arms. For more on this episode and related stories, you can follow us on TikTok and Instagram at mothersinarms.pod. Thank you, my friend and fellow Lux alumni, Dante Pescuzzo, for the original Mothers in Arms soundtrack. You caught the gist off the bat. Thank you for this track. Thank you also to Alan and Melissa at Pretty Easy Podcasts for your help in co-producing this episode of Letting Lena Go. If you have a minute to like the podcast on whatever form you're listening to this, so would appreciate it. And I'll also leave notes where I went to for my mental health, where I went to for the California Cryobank to buy the sperm, and my surrogate agency, in case you're interested. Thank you again. Have a wonderful day.